Welcome everybody to the latest episode of the Two Fish at the Table Poker Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Legend One on Poker Stars.
And I'm your other host, East Coast Sam on Poker Stars.
And Sam, happy birthday, 26 years old as of a few days ago. I know how much you love Six Deuce offsuit, so being 26 must be quite a time for you.
Yep, I'm very excited to be off of my parents' health insurance plan, so I now have to pay for my own health insurance. Yeah, 26, it's a big milestone. There were 26 seasons of the original Doctor Who. There's, 26
Fortnights
lots
and
of
one
things.
year.
Exactly. So, 26 is a big milestone. Thank you for the congratulations. You're obviously getting up there in age too.
I
So,
know I got a lot of grays here, you can see.
yeah, I can
In
see.
any, in any case, guys, so we apologize for the relatively lengthy hiatus between our last episode, but we had a lot of poker happenings in the last few weeks that we will discuss. But first and foremost, a few small poker news details I wanted to talk about. Number one is a big congrats to Mr. Cotton Snuffer for a big poker win. He's only played poker, he's only about 4 times since he kind of came out of the COVID poker retirement. He won, I think, like a six-figure score last week. So congrats to him for jumping right back into the poker world and having some big success in only a few events.
Yeah, we're very happy for you, Cotton. If you're watching, congratulations.
And on the more sad news, one of the most notable actors in the poker movie that we reviewed, All In, Louis Gossett Jr. did pass away. I think we should clarify when we critique movies or TV series or anything, we have nothing against the actors and cast personally. It's
Yeah.
all in good fun. We gave him a hard time for some of his dialogue in the film, but we respect the actors that portray roles, and I'll never blame anyone in Hollywood for taking a job to put food on the table, to cover rent for any movie role, whether it's a big leading role or a side position. So condolences to Louis Gossett Jr. for a career that I again haven't really seen much of his work, but I'm sure everyone who's more familiar with him will miss him dearly.
Yeah, he's an Oscar-winning actor. He's been in a bunch of television shows, a bunch of movies. So yeah, we're definitely sorry that he's passed away. His performance wasn't great in All In for sure. We're not trying to say All In is a good movie or anything, but yeah, we both totally understand that this is just, you have to make a paycheck somehow. So we get it.
And also, again, it's just a movie is pretty harmless. A harmless movie. It's not a good movie, but it's a harmless movie, even though we didn't like it really at all. But on that note, we wanted to go back to we had reviewed many different poker documentary TV specials last year, and so I did stumble upon one more that appeared. It was posted only in late February, but I think it actually was produced in 2016. It's this 51-minute special called Inside the Mind of a Poker Player. And I just thought it was just kind of something new on YouTube to check out. I love breaking down these programs with Sam. So I figured we'll go back to our middle podcast roots here and see if this was worth watching.
Yeah, I mean, this was an interesting documentary to watch. It's about six poker players, three professionals, Alexander Lanoux, who we've seen previously in documentaries, Katai, Davide Katai, who we've also seen at the WSOP, and Gail Bowman as well, along with three amateurs, and they're all wired up to all sorts of different technology, and then people sort of break down what their tells are and what their heart rate is like, and then there's little segments featuring Alex, Katai, and Gail having their brains literally picked apart to study the mind of a poker player. I was an intern at GBH and in particularly the Nova Science Documentary Department. So I'm sort of very familiar with science documentaries and sort of what their ins and outs are like. So this was sort of an interesting little trip down memory lane to be like, oh yeah, that's what I used to promote a few years ago. So this was an interesting watch for me.
And I'm a member of the medical world. I'm a nurse, and deal with patients from all different departments in the hospital. So again, anything medical related in poker is always going to pique my interest. Obviously, All In the movie had Grey's Anatomy mixed with poker and unique combination. But in this case, this was a documentary sort of trying to learn about the science behind what makes a poker player different or special or successful. And so I was really excited just to get into this documentary. And I actually thought after watching it that it would have been better served to have been maybe like a multi-part special. I see so many BBC and like in the UK documentary stories that are like 2 or 3 parts that you can kind of get a bit more in depth. So as a result of this just being kind of trying to accomplish a number of different sort of scientifical objectives in just a 51-minute span. I don't feel that this one really managed to answer any meaningful questions. It really hit that next level of sort of insight or intrigue for me.
Yeah, I mean, there's only one cash game tournament thing that they did in this. It would have, in order to have scientific research, you need to have, a control group. You need to have this over multiple periods of time, also with other players. It's clearly like they wanted to make some poker documentary and analyze people's minds and tells, and so they just sort of built a documentary around that idea. I still kind of liked it for what it was. It's not trying to be anything it's not. This is a French language documentary that they dubbed into English, but they left all the graphics. So there's all these French graphics, which I thought was kind of fun. But like the setup was pretty cool. Like they had three professional people who could study their body language. Again, they had them all hooked up to different things and really was breaking down like all of their tells, how somebody moves their lips, how someone moves their eyes, how they move their hands. People when they fold that they feel less stressed out than when they're involved in a hand, things like that, which I thought was interesting. And it also gives you a lot of information about how the brain works. And, this is the frontal cortex. And so this is short-term memory. The hippocampus is long-term memory, things like that. I'm an English major, so I don't know how this works, but, it's interesting.
So, this reminded me, you might recall there was a segment in the 2011 main event that was called Sports Science.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of scratches the same itch that this documentary does, where they had a couple players attached to various devices to study their biometrics, their temperature, their pulse, their breathing, and all that stuff. And so again, harken back. This is obviously a bit more in depth than that, 4-minute segment maybe was. So that was fine. The problem is that again, when it kind of reminded me of season 4 of Arrested Development, where the narrator's over explaining everything and talking over the action, versus us actually seeing the actors do the stuff on sort of in the context. So by trying to overlap the narration of the science of what's happening at the table, we don't really get much of a feel of the actual poker game that's sort of being played throughout the A to Z of the special. And so as a result, everything for me just kind of felt a little half-baked. I liked that we got a little bit of a background into the 3 pros under analysis and how they were tested using the same equipment, but in a different way. So the structure really is we see introduction, we cover one player, something related to their poker strengths, and then a test from the medical machinery that highlights the part of the brain that part of their skill set uses. And then it cuts back to a little bit of the poker game. Something happens. Okay, now the next player goes, and then a bit more of the poker game, then back to the next player. But the problem was, again, it felt like reminded me of when I was in high school and we'd have like a biology class. And the teacher would go, okay, you're gonna do an experiment about topic A. So go out to the school garden and just take lots of notes about what you see, and then make a report about your topic. And it felt like they were showing us all this data, every single part of the brain, putting it all out there, but not doing anything with that data once they display it to the audience. That was my problem.
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, this is just it's shorter than an hour. If it just really needs to be an hour and a half to let things be paced out, build the tension of what was going on in the poker game. We don't really see too many hands in the poker game, just little halves of hands and clips here and there. Which, would have been nice to have seen some more of that. But yeah, I mean, the segments in which they go and they sort of test their brains, I thought were kind of interesting. Alex has tested it with this sort of slot machine game, which is all about his award system. Basically, does he want to keep going or not after losing a hand? Kitai, it's more sort of like a memory game, and with Gail Bowman, they actually send they actually shock her a little bit because they treat her as like the Iron Lady, somebody who doesn't show her emotions. So they try to see like how stressed out she is. And for all 3 of them, it's like they do have different brain setups than most people do, which I thought was kind of interesting. That there is definitely something in the brain that successful, great poker players have that makes them better than other people. But yeah, I mean, I would have liked each of those segments to be a little bit more substantial. There just needed to sort of be more with all of these different components here that would have been more appealing.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of an M&M cookie, where you have like 3 or 4 M&Ms in this big cookie, and you like M&Ms but not so much cookies. So you enjoy the bites that have the M&M in your mouth, but then the rest of the cookie experience you're a little bit less. I really dug those segments The problem was is that they were often talked about how his brain compared to the average Joe. And I felt like if this had been maybe a two-part special, we could have had time that showed like the control group, again, the average Joe in the machine, compare them in the experiment versus directly compared to Davide Katai or Gail Bowman, so that we could really kind of feel or see and understand how these small neural pathway differences really play out in sort of, you know, the mechanics of how they were testing them. So we didn't quite get that. And again, the editing for the actual poker game was very strange because I guess it's some sort of like sit and go tournament, I guess. We don't really know if there's any stakes to it because, you know, if you and me sit down and play with four of our friends, just play a regular sit and go tournament, just, you know, there's no money to be won, there's no stakes, no one paid to play this, you know, I feel like you probably wouldn't get as good data, as valid data, as if it was like a real tournament with you know $10,000 on the line or something on the line. You know, again, you don't take it as seriously, and so maybe you know they can sort of almost role play in their head. Okay, we're going to take it 12% seriously, but again, that lingering thought in the back of my head was always kind of an ominous thought in my mind.
Yeah, it would have been nice to have had that information. Are they playing for like a trophy? Are they playing for money? What exactly is going on here? Especially because it's revealed at the end of the game that an amateur actually won and managed to beat Katai heads up. And they praised him for how stable he was and how good of a poker face he has, whereas Katai got more and more stressed as time went on. You know, that would have been a nice, interesting note to really explain and expand upon, but it's just sort of a montage at the end of, oh, Gail busted, then Alex busted, then these people busted. Would have been, you know, nice to have developed that more.
Yeah, especially since they try to make it seem like, oh, Davide is losing confidence. It's like, well, then show us a hand or two where show us why that happened. Like, did he make a bad call on the river? Did he, you know, just was he frustrated by being card dead? What was going on that would have caused that? You know, again, it's that end montage really rushed things, and it made the whole poker game feel pretty inconsequential as a result.
Yeah.
And so as far as the end message, like the document leaves us with the message that even the best can't beat bad luck. Okay, but then show us what kind of bad luck will happen to these players that cause them to lose. I mean, you know, I think it's a little almost mean to poker to just sort of, you know, whitewash everything and just say, oh yeah, it was just bad luck why they lost. Like, well, you guys show us a hand or two where, you know, did ace king lose to ace queen, or you know, as poker is not. There's a lot more skill than people think than average Joe probably thinks in poker than what we get to give it credit for in films like these, I think.
Yeah, there just wasn't enough shown. It's just really that simple. I mean, it's more about, you know, the brains and analyzing these poker players than anything else, which is fine. But there, if you're going to have this whole setup of these six people at a table and try to hype this up, then you need to show more of that.
Yeah, and again, it almost felt again like they had this obligation that they had to include so much poker in the special to offset the medicine or medical and scientific background. But really, had they stuck just to the maybe just stuck to the science and a bit more, I feel like it would have been a bit more successful. And again, I would have loved to see like a 10-part series, honestly, where you have like this master experimentism play. We're going to study the brains of poker players. We're going to meet them in episode one. We're going to maybe see one in action episode two, you know, and you sort of, you know, pace it in a certain way. That could have been, I think, something promising there.
Absolutely.
So as far as giving it a score, I have to give it a 2 out of 5. I guess I kind of hold things of a scientific nature to a higher standard than the average person because again, that's just kind of my one of my top academic interests there. I'm not sure about you though.
Yeah, too. I mean, this is just, it's fine for what it is. The production design, the value is pretty decent. The little segments are kind of, you know, it's fine. I don't feel the need to watch this again. Um, I'm probably not going to remember it a whole lot about it. So yeah, it's you know, it's not something I'm like very, very mad about. You know, it's a 2.
And so something that relates to the number 2 is the final 2 events of the Mind Sport Olympiad that we haven't discussed yet. There were, as of our last episode, 2 events to end things. The Fusion event, sort of a first time of me playing Fusion ever, and then the old classic No Limit Hold'em events that I was very excited about. The Fusion event, actually, one of the members of the Mind Sport Olympiad PokerStars group created a sort of a couple of home games to give some of the players that were interested a little bit of practice playing Fusion, and I thought it was pretty helpful actually. I was fairly successful. Only a handful of players played. You played as well, and I had a good sense of the flow of the game, the swings of the game, sort of maybe little tiny strategic points, the importance of seeing the hand to the turn, little things like that. So that got me in a good preparatory state for the tournament, if you ask me.
Yeah, so just to explain the rules, it starts out like no limit hold'em. You get two cards. Then, if you stick around to the flop, you are dealt a third card in your hand, and then if you stick around to the turn, you get a fourth card. So it starts out as hold'em, and then it transitions into pot limit Omaha. So it's a weird game to play. I mean, there's a lot of variance involved. There's a lot of different other factors you have to consider, moving forward with the hand. If you have like ace four offsuit, and you have two different flushes that you could potentially hit, do you proceed with that versus, pocket tens? It was a tricky game for me to kind of figure out. I mean, during the preliminary practice that we did, I just it was just too weird for me to really just sort of wrap my head around. I kind of liked it. It was something new. It was something interesting, but there's just so many variables you now have to think about, especially once you actually go to a tournament and the tables are more filled out. And, just sort of boggles the mind a little bit almost.
Yeah, it was a six-handed event, 10K stack, 10-minute levels. I was again really excited. I'd gotten third place in the sort of exhibition where I was one card. I was like I think one outed or two outed from two outed from the chip lead with three left. I would have that would have been pretty awesome. But again, I was still pretty happy. And again, my biggest two takeaways were seeing cheap flops is very, very profitable because even if you have like king of spades, four of diamonds, not a good hand on hold'em, but then your third card could be the ten of spades, or it could be the five of diamonds to pair off with your hand. And so even hands that don't have any connectivity to each other, that third card can change things, and so you're not dead before the flop. And also with the event being pot limit, you can sort of figure out, okay, I can see a turn and get a fourth card. And again, you can go from bottom pair in Omaha in Fusion on the flop to making quads on the turn. I mean, that just speaks to how swingy things can be. And so you want to draw to the nuts, obviously, but a lot of hands can give you a little bit of an inkling that you could get that. So again, my strategy was beforehand, see as many cheap flush as possible, and just don't fold that equity that can be so swingy, especially when your head's up.
Yeah, I had a similar strategy. I mean, I did want to see a lot of hands, but also, I became a tight player, so it's sort of a struggle of, do you play on the tighter side or do you play on the looser side? And I tried to play on the looser side for this event. I don't really feel it went well for me, but maybe I'm getting ahead of the game here a little bit.
I mean, I was seeing a lot of flops, and I wasn't wasn't really folding away chips. I wasn't paying off big bets in the river. I just wasn't winning any big pots. I would see 10 flops in a row for one big blind, and I would maybe win like two of those 10 hands, and I only win like three big blinds back. So I'm down four big blinds by that math. It was a weird thing. And also was you also, even when you're seeing a lot of flops, you're giving your chance to not run card because it's kind of a defense maneuver between running card. If you're always getting all four cards in Fusion and you're seeing the up to the turn, you're going to have something some of the time. I just didn't make any big hands at all.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I think we both won, a few small pots here and there, but nothing too big. I mean, we were never either of us a big stack at really any point.
So I even though I was pretty happy with my strategy, I just ended up blowing down to 3.5 thousand chips from my starting stack of 10, and I ended up shoving pocket tens pre-flop, and I ran into aces. And luckily in Fusion, it's only 70-30 when you're over pair,
Right.
under pair, not 80-20 like it is in Hold'em. But unfortunately, I just bricked, and I was out in 20th place out of 23 players when I don't feel like I was outplayed. I don't feel like I made any bad calls. I didn't really make any mistakes. Just that what a running theme was, I just could never, accumulate chips because I just was never given any good opportunities to get them.
Yeah, I mean, I think I played too many hands and I should have folded some other hands and been gotten tighter sooner. I managed to tighten up toward the end, but yeah, I can't remember when I busted, but I busted
I
for
wrote down. You wrote down in 17th place, yes, and you busted on the river to a flush despite having the ace of spades blocker to the flush. So you
yeah.
were 75% chance to hold up and win double up, and it didn't work out. And again, it just kind of speaks to, it's funny, the Mind Sport Olympiad, especially in these pot limit and no limit events. I could watch other tables all day long and just see all these crazy all-ins, all these crazy pots, and then our table is it just never seems to happen that way. and it results in us just sort of having these middling performances sometimes.
Yeah.
So then a couple days later was the No Limit Hold'em event. 900 tables, 10K stack, 10-minute levels, a bit bigger this time, 31 players. Again, it was actually my worst performance, or one of my worst performances last year, because of just some bad misfortune when I played it. So I was, again, I felt like I was still on my game at this point. I felt like I'd played pretty well up to this point in the Mind Sport Olympiad. And having not gone off a medal yet, I was hoping this would be, last 12 times the charm. That was my hope there.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to do as well as possible. I mean, obviously, I got second place in this event last year, getting very lucky in order to get to second place. So I just wanted
You
to
played very well, though.
Hmm?
You played very well, though, in that event, too, though.
I mean, the guy, I'm supposed to go out in third 95 times out of
I'm
100.
saying before that, up to that point, up until that point.
Yeah, I played okay. I made a couple of good
Well,
C bets and bluffs.
every
And
C-bet worked, though. I mean, they obviously were afraid of you, and you picked good spots to C-bet there. But in any case, so with this event here, I was pretty card dead again. I think I never had like a big pocket pair. I was just sort of skating by, and it always felt
Mm.
like whenever I had, the top of my range of what I was being dealt, it was always under the gun, so I could never. It was like even like King 10, King Jack, King Queen, Ace Queen. It was always under the gun, which so I was actually folding a few of those spots there because of how crazy my table was actually. But I ultimately I was a bit looser towards the beginning, even though I wasn't getting any cards. I played a bit tighter towards the end. I had a brief card rush at the end of the first hour. So I went from a middling stack up to 17,000 with two kind of big wins. That was pretty awesome. And then from that point on, it was just sort of a grind, sort of trying to, survive all these crazy punches being thrown around the table. I think we were at the same table for part of this tournament, and
Yeah.
we were seeing people shoving King 5 offsuit into, Ace Ace and making, a flush, or all these crazy hands, all these hands that, the best hand not holding up on the river. I mean, wild stuff, but never hands that I was involved in.
Yeah, it was the same for both of us. I mean, it's kind of strange in the early stages of a lot of MSO events that there are players who go really crazy and they tend to chip up very fast, and then they tend to blind out very fast and leave very fast. But it never happened to either of us during this whole MSO. It happened to me a couple times during the year where I got third place. Um, but yeah, this year we really just sort of struck out in terms of the cards. This event, like, I don't really remember very well. I don't think I was ever a big stack. I don't think I had a whole lot moving. Yeah, I just don't know what else to say. Yeah.
So I ended up busting in 15th place, so one above the median position, which again
Mm.
it's not up to my standards, although it is a lot better than most of my performances or ending finishes this year. I was all in of Ace Queen. I think I had like 10 big blinds. The
Yeah.
guy min raised with King Jack. I shoved, and then I have Ace Queen. He calls with King Jack, and again I felt like, if I had fewer chips, I understand the call, but I felt like maybe it was one or two big blinds too much for that to be an easy call, and of course I lose. And again, it just like there was just another run of all-ins where I was ahead, and couldn't hold up. And again, I think that was my first or only like second all-in the whole tournament. I wasn't even playing a high variance, high risk reward, high risk game. So of course my first all-in, I lose with the best hand when I'm seeing players survive like 4 or 5 consecutive all-ins with weird cards. So unfortunate, but I did kind of have fun in the end. I lasted long enough. I mean, there was a good like half hour where there were maybe like 20 all-ins in my table and Sam's table, and there were just like one bust out. It was pretty fun to
Yeah.
watch at least, but ultimately 15th place was what I got.
Yeah, it's a shame. I mean, you came close in the Raz event, and then just for the rest of the MSO, it just seemed like I mean, you made a couple final tables, but it just seemed like for the rest of the MSO, like you were just card dead and just not getting the spots you needed, which is a shame.
And in Sam's case, he was telling me some of the hands he was getting, especially after I was butting, so he could really kind of focus on his game. He got a few more premium hands than I did. He managed to actually reach the final table of 9 players with 23,000 chips. So a bit, that it's not terrible. That's about, 2/3 of the chip average. He was
Yeah.
in 7th place out of 9, and ended up sort of bobbing and weaving, folding a bit, down to 5 big blinds and ultimately busting. But 6th place finish. So again, you finished higher than your final table beginning spot, which is good. And again, you just were pretty card dead at a table that just wasn't really flowing in a positive direction for you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot to say about it. I mean, I was just sort of, as you mentioned, bobbing and weaving, sort of floating my way around, not seeing the big stacks go after each other. They were definitely waiting for the small stacks to go out. So, just happened. Sixth place is still totally fine, respectable finish, but
Yeah, and it did end things in the 2024 MSO with a final table tally of Sam 3 and me 3. So we tied that, and it's kind of nice to end on a high note and a final table at least.
right.
Last year you had a final table in the last event, so that's kind of cool. Obviously, Sam one medal, zero for me. Of course, I got the closest I could probably ever possibly get, besides maybe like a guy being at one chip and then winning or something crazy.
Yeah.
It does kind of keep the hunt on for me, which is kind of a motivating factor. And again, I understand this is just it's a bunch of for fun poker events just for some little medal medallion. I'm very happy with how I played. I didn't run well, didn't get very many cards, and when I did, the cards ran out before the important point in Raz for me. But again, I always enjoyed playing it, even if it's frustrating. And I think we have more data that shows that Sam is definitively a better player than me because he's consistently doing better. He finished 10th overall in the standings. I finished like 15th, which again is not terrible considering how awful I ran and how a lot of players were kind of hogging all the medals. And again, it never seemed like they were um, the players that were getting all these medals, I never felt like they outplayed me or they like bluffed me or busted me. It was just seemed like they were accumulating chips from the weaker players, and so it's hard to keep up with them if you don't have the same funnel of income from those lower skill players in the that would bust out in the same first five spots every event. So it is what it is.
It is what it is. Yeah. I mean, I definitely felt we were both, not getting the cards we needed sort of throughout the whole MS. So I'm okay with my performance overall. I obviously wish I'd done a little bit better. Getting 10th. I think it's the second lowest I've finished in the poker events since I've started doing the MSO. So, it's still a top 10 finish, which is still fine. And again, all the people who I think won medals this year and won the MSO. Like they definitely deserved it. They definitely have some skill. But it'd be, if we'll see how the card distribution goes next year and see how things go. I'm very happy for them, but hopefully we can, you can get a medal finally, and we'll see if I can get a gold medal if that's ever at all possible. So we'll see.
And again, I was partially handicapped by the fact that a few events I missed for work.
Right.
And again, it's a UK run sort of organization, so they're not basing it on America's time zone or time slot. So I again usually it happened last year too, a little bit less this year, but I again a couple of my best half hour beginnings were in events that I couldn't complete. So I do feel like if you had like a tailor-made roster of events and scheduling for me personally, I probably would have gone a bit further than I did. But it's okay. Next year is next year.
Yep. Or we'll just fly to the UK and we'll do it there.
On that note, we want to move on to again just some of the events that took place between our last episode and today. Obviously, Sam's birthday got in the mix there, so we were sort of having some more fun than we normally would. So, firstly, because we were entering a new year of Sam's life, I took it upon myself to stake Sam and myself into the 1-3 cash game at the Boston Encore. And this happened on Sam's birthday week, and so we were very excited to sit down and see how we could do. I obviously have some limited cash game experience from my interference with Adam Grossack, and Sam had never really. Again, I know he's this type of player in play money poker, so I was just very curious how tight he would be in the live scene. So that was sort of the my most intriguing curiosity I wanted to quench here with this trip.
Yeah, I mean, I've never played cash before. So, I mean, I've done some informal sort of play money things at college and things, but, I just wanted to sort of just try this as a birthday thing, one-time birthday thing. I don't really have the discretionary income at this stage of my life to be playing a lot of, cash for poker. So I just wanted to try this out, and, Ben proposed this idea, and we had a little bit of back and forth of, what exactly the staking would look like, how many big blinds we each have, who would be splitting gas, things like that. But we eventually worked out a compromise. We won't exactly go into the financial details, but we eventually worked something out. So
Yeah, and so we you go to the casino and they put you on a list. There's only so many tables, there's a wait list. So we get on the wait list. I let Sam be one spot ahead of me on the list. And as we're waiting to play, we meet. There's actually a woman who is in line before us. So we're kind of talking for her name is April, and we just talk about what brought you to poker, how what brings you to Encore Casino today. And so she's telling us about, oh, it's something I grew up with. My uncle influenced me, and so every now and then I stop by and I play, for a couple hours just to see for some fun, meet some people, win some money usually. And she said that she usually makes maybe like, uh, you know, 35% of the time she loses money, and the other two-thirds of the time she makes money. And so I'm like, okay, it's respectable. Obviously, how much you're losing, how much you're winning would matter, but in any case, so we're probably waiting maybe like 45 minutes or
Hmm.
so, long enough for me to go to the bathroom, drink some water, stay hydrated, get ready, and you can kind of look around the table, see who's playing. And there's one guy at, I think it was like table 3 or something on the left, when you're facing the cashier clerk. And I was like, that's Chase Bianchi. Adam had mentioned him in our interview how he had played with him at the Encore Casino. He's from Massachusetts. He made the final table a couple years ago in 2021. I think he got was ninth. Uh,
Ninth, yeah.
so so I was like, oh my God. And in my head, I'm torn. Should I talk to him? Should I just watch him play? I mean, I don't know him that. I don't really know him besides that little bit of that main event, but it's still really cool to see a guy that literally we were discussing and this exact location only with Adam like a year and a half ago. So that was like a mind blowing moment for me.
Yeah, I was in the middle of writing a poem, and Ben just sort of says, "Is that Chase Bianchi?" Just sort of out loud, and I looked up, like, "Oh yeah, it's Chase Bianchi." And then I went back to writing my poem.
And so again, but I notice him as we're sort of close to being next in line. So I can't really spend too much time focusing on that. But I do sort of, walk around the perimeter of the table. See, he's got like a ton of chips. Like the table has, it's like eight-handed, and I swear he has like 55% of the chips that are on the table. Not numeric value, not sure, but the actual chips on the table, just like counting the stacks of 20, he's got them all out chipped, and he's smiling, he's having a good time. He sort of looks over at me as I'm walking by. I don't want to distract him. He's almost in the zone, but that's pretty cool. And then I watch for a couple of hands. He doesn't really play them, but nonetheless, it's still kind of cool to see the guy in action. I hear Sam's name come up on the speaker. Oh, Sam, table 4, C3. So I let Sam, because he's before me, and I'm obviously it's okay if I'm not at the same table as Sam. I don't want to alter anyone's game because we're both at the same table. But I want to watch Sam play, and so he sits down. He's got, I think, like 200 in chips. We agreed he'd have 200 in chips, so he's got enough to again, if it's $4 for one orbit because it's 1 and 3, so that's literally 50 orbits. That's times 8-handed. That's 400 hands. So you could just fill up 400 hands and still and then bust. So obviously he's got plenty of time to get a premium hand or a good spot to make some chips. So that was sort of the point zero for Sam there at the table.
Yeah, and obviously once I started playing, I sort of stopped paying attention to Ben, and I wanted to sort of get a sense of what the other players were like. Fairly decent mixture of people. I'd say they were, maybe a little bit on the older side. I don't think I was the youngest person there. I don't really recall.
It
Um,
was one youngster. He had like a Boston University sweater on.
yeah,
So maybe like a year or two out of college, probably, because it still fit him pretty well.
yeah. So yeah, as Ben mentioned, I'm obviously a tight player when it comes to play money. So as you might imagine, with actually, $200 in front of me, I was quite tight. But also I was quite card dead. I mean, I was just getting a lot of like 10-3 offsuits, Jack 6 offsuits, things like that. Big blind, I, be in the big blind, and somebody would limp in or somebody would raise, and I'd have to just sort of get rid of my hand. But it wasn't any, it was like Queen 3 off, it was 6-5 off, things like that. So yeah, for the first few orbits, I was just sort of sitting back, holding a lot of hands. There wasn't really a lot of conversation or anything. There were quite a few people who were, just wearing headphones, kind of just keeping their heads down. But I had little chit chats with people. One guy asked me if this was my first time being at the casino, and going into it, I was sort of just thinking, like, if they're interested in talking to me, I'll talk back to them. Just hey, what's your name? My name's Sam. What's yours? I'll just sort of casual banter in between hands, not while a hand is going on. But when it came to a question like, is this your first time here? I thought, should I should I tell them it's my first time here, but then that'll make me seem like a fish? Should I be like, oh yeah, I'm a WSOP circuit grinder. What exactly should I do? So I just decided to say like, oh, I've just played a few times before. I'm mainly an online person. The guy was just like, oh, okay. That was just it. He just sort of shut down the conversation after
Yeah, I
that.
mean, I don't think you could have fooled them if you had lied to them,
Yeah.
because people can tell when you're lying, especially when you're just sitting across the table from them and talking to them, one to
Mhm.
one. But again, so Sam gets called out. I probably wait maybe a good 10, 15 minutes, and then I get called to a different table. And April is actually at that same table. So I don't really know her, but I know one person at the table. I'm not facing Chase Bianchi's table or anything, so I'm not gonna be able to sort of turn my head and see him in action. But I'm just sort of sitting down. And again, I'm remembering the sort of the cash game flow. People raising 3, 4, 5x. Especially compared to, I played 1-2 with Adam, a while ago, and with 1-3, they're a bit higher on the multiplier of that opening raise size, as you know from your table. Um, my table was, fairly, I'm not gonna say middle-aged men, but it was like, maybe like late 30s, 40s, sort of demographically, and then obviously April and myself. So, and again, they all kind of seemed like recreational players, just from their body language and just kind of their energy. So, for the most part, I think rec players, I said that they're usually playing a bit more premium cards, maybe, just some ace X's, but I was kind of locking into on the little nuances of them as I was playing, and again in those first few orbits, which is very important when you're trying to establish your game plan.
Yeah, I mean, as I was, so I wasn't getting frustrated as I was folding hands. I was just sort of trying to read people. There was a guy that was two people over to my left who seemed to be a little bit more aggressive. Was making 3 or 4x raises a lot of the time and was c betting a lot as well. The guys to my right were a little bit more passive, I felt. They were being a little bit tight like myself. So I was just sort of trying to just sort of sit back and just sort of read the table and see how things were going those first couple orbits. And again, I had 200 chips in front of me to begin with. Obviously, as I was folding, I was losing a little bit more, but still plenty to sort of weather the storm a little bit. And I do remember when Ben was called, I sort of just turned and glanced at him. I didn't want to give away that we were together, we were brothers or anything. So, I just sort of, looked at him and he looked at me and went to his table.
So I didn't really play a hand for a while, and I did see I think one flop from the big blind for free, quote unquote, but I didn't really open a pot until I finally got ace queen from the button, and I think the small blind folded, the big blind called, and luckily the flop came like queen 5-7, and so he checks, I bet, he folds, so I get a little bit, so I'm a little bit above even by this point, but really just for that entire afternoon that we were there. No, I wish I could say we had some sort of storybook. Oh, these poker pros I know came down and sat at the table and played with me, but that didn't quite happen. I ended up, I think, by the time we left, just kind of skipping ahead to the end, and we'll get to your flow. I think I ended up like down like $10. So again, it was kind of fun to be there with you. No big swings, and a $10 ticket to watch some poker action was kind of fun. There were some fun hands to watch for sure that I witnessed between other players. But so again, a fun little thing. No harm, no foul for me at least. Whereas for you, it was a bit different for you. I know that much.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was, again, as I mentioned, card dead for the first, 3 or 4 orbits or so. The first hand I really played, I was in the small blind and I had pocket sixes. So I mentioned the guy that was a couple people over to me to the left who was playing aggressive. He folded. It actually folded around to me. So I decided to make a 3x raise. So the guy calls, big blind calls. The flop was, I think, king 9-3, if I'm remembering correctly. And I have pocket sixes, so not ideal for me. So he checked, right? I would have been second to act.
No,
So
you're small blind to your first act.
right, I'm first to act, right? So I was like, I'm sort of just thinking like, what exactly should I do? And so I finally just decided to bet $10. And he called. The turn was a jack, so it's king jack 9-3. And I think there were two diamonds. I think it was the king nine of diamonds.
Hmm?
So I'm thinking this is not good. There's three straight cards on board, there's two flush cards. But what does he have that he he calls my raise and then calls the C bet. So I just, I'm sort of thinking through, does he have a king? Does he have a nine? Is he on a draw? If I bet here and he's got a nine, is he going to fold? What does he put me on? So I decided, why not? I'll just bet again. So I bet $20, and he tanked for about a minute or so and then folded. So I won that pot. So that was nice. I'm feeling good about myself. I won the pot. Another couple orbits pass. The action went fairly quickly, I thought.
Yeah, it does.
Again, the guy that was raising big was over to my left. He, it was just we would raise and people would just fold. So things moved fairly quickly. And he was chipping up a little bit as well. So finally I get ace jack. So he raised the crazy guys I mentioned. So I have ace jack of diamonds. He made it like a 3x raise, and I figured, why not? Why not we just play with this guy once? So I called, and everybody else folded, so it's me versus him. I'm second to act two, so that's kind of why I did it. The flop came ace 9-6, if I'm remembering correctly. It was the nine of diamonds, ace of hearts, six of clubs, I think.
Okay.
So he bet 20. And so now I'm thinking, okay, I've got ace jack. I mean, it's top pair, decent kicker. Would he do this with ace nine? Would he do this with ace six or pocket nines or pocket sixes or ace queen or so? So I decided, but
It's him though.
what exactly should I, huh?
I mean, it's him though. He's the one guy I feel like.
Yeah, I know. So I'm just sort of wondering, should I raise here? Should I just call and see a turn? But, if there's like a 10 on the turn, he could, I'm just sort of just going through this, I'm second guessing myself and third guessing myself in my mind. I think I tanked for about like a minute and a half, just going over in my head, just doubting my own decision making. But I finally just called. I have ace jack. The turn was a jack. So I'm thinking, okay, I've got top two. This is good. I like this. He bet 45, I believe. And so I'm thinking, okay, I've got top two. I mean, this is good. Should I just let him just let him hang himself, basically? So, but then I'm thinking, like, well, what does he have? Does he have ace queen? Does he have ace king? What if a queen or a king comes up on the river? Again, I'm just second and third and fourth guessing myself. I'm so indecisive. But I finally just decided to call. And then the river was, I think, like a 3. And it was like a rainbow board. So it's ace jack 9-6-3, something like that. And then he checked. And so I'm like, all right, so hopefully he just calls with like ace queen. And then I put in, I think, 70, I think.
Yeah.
And he just sort of gave like a blank look on his face and folded. But I took the pot down, so that was nice. And then I thought about just like getting up and leaving right there. I mean, that was a big pot, winning all those chips. But then I figured, sort of like, winning a big pot and then leaving is sort of frowned upon in casino rooms. And I think there was like a couple tables over. The one time I did sort of like look up from my table, there was a guy who sort of like won a big pot and then left a couple tables over from me, and the other players didn't seem too happy about it. So I decided I would just, sort of just sit there for a little while longer. So I just did like one more orbit, and there was one hand where I had no, it was in the big blind. Yeah, the last time I was in the big blind, I had, I think it was king queen off or something, and it wasn't the guy who'd been raising a lot. It was the guy next to him to his left who raised, and I just decided to defend, and I missed the flop, and when he let out, I just folded. So I managed to make a profit. I made a profit of about, I think it was, or rather, I shouldn't say I made a profit of $250. I left the table with about $250. So respectable, it was all right.
Yeah, you factored my -10. That's plus 40 for us. So again,
Yeah.
it's something that's pretty cool. And here I thought that would be the end of sort of our poker escapades between episodes, and that we would have any more stories. But I got an email from the guys behind the Poker Global Awards, and I guess by some miracle they somehow caught wind of our podcast, and I guess someone had mentioned to them, oh, these guys joked that they had got snubbed from the nomination, which I couldn't believe. I'm like, this is incredible. And so they actually gave me the email of the guys behind the Hustler Poker live streams. And they're like, hey, I mean, we know that you're not a regular on our thing, but we would love to throw you on our stream just, once, because they air them, almost one a day for every week. So one slot's not going to make or break their program. And so I'm like, I mean, okay, what kind of stake are we talking there? Because again, I'm not, super wealthy here, but they're like, oh, yeah, there's this $50-$100 event, and we're happy to give you a partial staking so that way you feel a bit more comfortable, a bit more able to play your game. And so they actually wire me $10,000 for this $50-$100 stream. And I'm like, wow, it's gonna be like live on YouTube. Like that's pretty cool. Who am I gonna be playing with? I don't watch Hustlers regularly. Every now and then, if I hear something from like the poker grapevine, okay, I'll watch maybe a clip or two. There was that glass door breaking that was hilarious a while from Hustler. And so I was like, oh yeah, why not? We'll give it a shot here. And so they I have to pay for my accommodations, but again, $10,000 to play, and I could win some money. I can't say no to that. I didn't have work for the 2 days that trip would have encompassed. So I tell Sam, hey, this just happened. You couldn't even believe when I told you this. Your face was like in the state of like extreme shock.
Yeah, it was just sort of one of those lightning in a bottle moments where, somebody just sort of watched our last episode of talking about the poker awards, and this just sort of happened. I thought it was just some sort of joke or something, and then you actually showed me the email and you showed me all of this. So it's just I'm almost speechless about it. It's just
I
wonderful.
mean, so then the next 36 hours are just such a blur. I'm going to the airport. I'm on the plane. I'm, getting sick on the airplane. I'm getting to my hotel. I'm checking in. I'm getting my best poker attire on. I'm ready to go, And I guess they told me that this was sort of a subsection of their streams. It would be edited after the fact because of some of the other players in the roster. So it wasn't going to be on YouTube like concurrently with the action. Is going to be put up later, which was unfortunate given how things would later turn out. But nonetheless, that's what the plan was. And so I sit down there, and I can't believe it. They make a last second adjustment. I guess as I was kind of a last minute replacement. Nik Airball is at the table with us. He's buying in for like $50,000. He's got, half like 500 big blinds. I'm like, wow, I'm going to play against Nik Airball. And my twin brother's name is Nick. So it's kind of, he's looking next to me for, my lifelong rival here. So I'm like, wow, can I actually pull this off here? And obviously, I'm keeping this a secret from the rest of our family. Sam knows because he's part of the podcast, but I wanted to surprise them with this news because it's just so incredible, and I still can't believe it myself talking about it right now. That's the funny thing about this.
Yeah, and Ben was also sending me little texts because you can step away from the table and just send a text. So he just goes, "Sam, you're not going to believe this, Nik Airball," and I'm like, "What? Oh, you
He's
saw Nik
right.
Airball?"
He's right on my left. So literally, if I get aces once, we're like going from 10K to 20K. Like I know I'm gonna make it happen. And so the game starts, and again, there's not like a time limit for the action. Obviously, a stream they usually cap it after a certain number of hours. I'm just like I still can't believe I'm here. And again, this is all not my money. I paid for the airline, for the hotel, and for the taxi and all that, so my food. But I'm still free rolling in my head, even though it's a partial investment of myself in this. And again, I'm if I blow it all in one hand, I can deal with it. It's just for fun. It's unbelievable. We're living my best life here. YOLO, all those mantras here. Very exciting. And unfortunately, kind of like with at Boston Encore, just kind of I didn't really get involved in any crazy wild hands to start off with. I'm kind of card dead. Even I know that on the Hustler, people play those like, those any two Broadway cards or, suited aces or like played very strongly. I couldn't even get those cards really. I was getting like 9-4, 8 deuce. I think I had like ace 10 once, but there was like a 3-bet before me. So I'm like, I'm not going to risk it. So again, I'm not really making good quality, poker entertainment myself. And I'm so like in awe that I'm not really able to be very conversational too. So it's just such a unique experience for me. So I'm kind of like I don't want to overstep my boundaries here, but also I kind of have to because I'm meant to be a member of this big table.
Yeah, and again, I'm not obviously able to watch this, unfortunately. So Ben's just sort of sending me little text updating, this is what's going on, this is what my stack is, and I'm, sending little text back, you root on, you do this. I didn't want to give him advice or anything because I just sort of wanted him to play his game. But yeah, I mean, I was nervous just, sitting here, just like, what the heck? How is he doing?
I mean, it takes a good while before I win that first pot, and even then it was a pretty small pot. I flopped two pair with like ace queen, and the guys folded. So at least I'm kind of even-ish, even if I'm a little bit down from my starting. And then really kind of after maybe the second hour was when things kind of picked up. Other players by this point have busted once and rebought in, so the number of chips at the table keeps increasing. Everyone has the initial buying amount, but that the table is a number of dollars on the felt is going to only increase over time. And so really by then, like the number of chips like almost doubled by this point, and I'm still kind of the same. So you kind of get a sense that if someone's losing, you can kind of they're maybe more willing to take a flip if they think it's a flip. So at one point, actually, one guy was knocked down to like $3,000 and shoved tens, and I had queens, and maybe he would have thought that I might have had like ace king there, when really I know he thinks I have ace king. So and the fact that I have queens means I can play one extra raise pre-flop and get him put the money in. So I win that hand, so I'm up a bit. And so again, I'm still it's just so unreal to be literally, 3 years ago we're podcasting about the main event in 03, and now here I am here winning thousands of dollars just out of the blue because we posted, about the Globe Poker Awards last month. I mean, it's just pretty surreal.
Yeah, we should probably thank the people who got Ben this gig and got Ben this offer. So thank you, anonymous, whoever you are. I don't know the name. So
I don't want to name names of the email. I want to keep that private because I'm sure they have the whole, you know, privacy issues. I don't want to out them or anything, but thank you again. So I was about 5.5 hours of poker action. I think I ended the entire session at like 13,550. And so I returned the $10,000 to essentially my backer, because that's theirs. And I get to keep all the profits, and you factor in the hotel and everything. So I got about almost 3 grand just from our podcast. So that's pretty awesome. And they explained that because of the nature of this particular stream, it's not going to be actually posted to YouTube until I think some sort of holiday or something, maybe, or it was like some theme to it. So, or there was something. So I think it's going to be actually released as this is a classic stream that we like a never before seen footage kind of thing. And so I think that they told me sometime in May is when it's going to be dropped on YouTube. So we'll obviously break it down. We'll discuss it in the whole podcast treatment. Maybe in like 2 months once we have time to digest all that. So, and I'm sure it'll help our podcast grow. So I'm very excited about that. And so that is just one more thing that our listeners can look out for in the future.
yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see it. I know some details, but not all of them, and I'm obviously curious to see how they package it and edit it together. So that's definitely something I'm curious to see.
Yeah, and so kind of like in like a daisy chain of events here, by virtue of me just being at the Hustler Live poker stream, other poker players are watching from the rail. People are tweeting about it. So it's a nice community. So I'm getting tweets and emails from people in Vegas about maybe further poker escapades, because they want to get a piece of this sweaty, nervous young man in the poker world of podcasts. And so I tell them, hey, my brother Sam's also an equal partnership in this whole endeavor here. Don't forget to include him. And so I know a couple of them reached out to you. So tell me what happened with that.
Well, I don't want to name too many names. As I mentioned, I think on the podcast previously, I'm a freelance writer, so I'm more sort of interested in pursuing that more so than poker. So I don't want to say anything just yet. Just say that there's a couple of coals in the fire, so to speak. Different offers for different writing things that I might not be doing. I've pitched a couple articles to a couple of poker publications. But again, as a freelance writer, I know that I've pitched a lot of places, and then things just don't quite work out one way or another. I've given them ideas for sort of, one idea. I guess I'll just say this much. One idea I have is sort of like, the serial podcast, but it's for the poker community, and the idea is like each season is a 10 episodes exploring like a mystery within poker, like, what actually happened between Jamie Gold, Crispin Laser, what actually happened with Full Tilt Poker, what actually happened with Stu Unger's downfall, something like that. And you can have different sort of people that I'd be interviewing or somebody else. It might not be me who's hosting the show, it might be somebody else. But that's sort of something I've pitched to a couple different people that I've spoken to. And then also I'm trying to get sort of interviews for the podcast. And again, sort of calls in the fire, just sort of chatting back and forth with people. I got like sort of a couple little like, hey, would you be interested in being staked? This tournament here or this tournament there, would you go up to New Hampshire to play poker, things like that. Not something that I'm super interested in. Again, only like a couple of small offers. But yeah, I mean, we'll see how things go, and it's going to be a gradual process. It'll probably be a few months down the road before you see any sort of thing with my byline on it.
Exactly. And again, it's such a rush. It's amazing how quickly things move in the poker world. And again, I all these days that these things happen to us, I'm thankful for, and I can't wait to see what will happen next in this magical journey this podcast has taken us on.
Yeah, I mean, we should, we're trying to proceed cautiously with this. Obviously, we're not trying to let this go to our head, let anybody play us for fools or anything. Like, we really want to just make sure that we're taking advantage of each opportunity that comes our way, each connection, really just sort of, you know, stepping through this bit by bit so that we don't get, have our time be wasted. Because again, I've pitched articles in the past to places and they, string you along. They're like, oh, you're such a good guy. We really like working with you. And then nothing happens. I've applied to so many jobs and gone through so many interview stages and then nothing happens. So that's also one reason why I don't want to say a name like, I've pitched an article to Sports Illustrated to write something. Not that I've done that. I'm just saying, like, I pitch an article to Sports Illustrated, I'm going to be in Sports Illustrated, then nothing happens. I don't want to disappoint anybody. So, we'll just see how things go.
I know. I mean, not to this big moral soapbox here, but I just can't stand when someone will waste an hour of your time by talking up your ear about all these crazy things that aren't even true, and you find out later that it was all fake, and you feel like you wasted your time in the end, because it's not about being a phony. It's about being your true self and respecting the time of the people that listen to you in your life.
Yeah, and again, all the people we've chatted to have been pretty nice to us. Not that, I mean, we're not exactly chatting with them together, we're sort of just on our own doing things. But we'll just see how things go, and just, fingers crossed. Hopefully the luck continues. As we know in poker, you can get a card rush and then all of a sudden lose it, and in the course of one day you just you lose your whole bankroll. So hopefully that's not what's going to go on here. Hopefully we can practice some good bankroll management.
Exactly. And again, a shout out to the guys we name dropped here: Chase, April, Nick, everybody involved here. There's no fooling anybody here that you guys are what this podcast is all about, and we thank you for being a part of our lives. And I think that kind of covers all of our topics here for this episode. So, guys, happy end of March, start of April to you. We'll see you next time. We have, we are always coming with new ideas for future podcast topics. I think our next one might just be poker scenes in television. That's
Yeah.
on our list here. That could be next here. So look forward to that, and obviously look forward to more updates in the poker world. And until next time, guys, enjoy your poker, enjoy your TV, enjoy your poker on TV.
Take care, everyone.